Welcome back to the channel. Today we're running through some Premier League predictions. We're going to be talking about first manager sacked, best transfer, worst transfer, star young player, and a few other categories. We're going to start off with star young player. There are so many names that you could talk about in this category. A few that come to mind for me on my kind of mini shortlist has to be Fatawu at Leicester. This guy got something like 13 assists last season in the Championship, 5 or 6 goals. Powerful, pacey winger with a great first touch. I think if Leicester City struggle, which I do see them struggling this season, I do think someone like Fatawu will be that kind of player that you still look at and think he's a Premier League quality player. They've signed him for £17 million. It wouldn't surprise me if Leicester City got relegated and he stayed in the Premier League. He's so pacey. He was electric in the Championship last season. I think he's someone that you have to keep an eye on as a young player, only 20 years old. Obviously, a bit of bias as a City fan with Taylor Harwood-Bellis, a powerful young centre-back. Obviously, did very, very well at Southampton. He's been loaned out a few times in the Championship with Burnley as well a couple of years ago. This guy's got all the makings to be a Premier League centre-back. It's a shame on a romantic level that he couldn't quite be a centre-back for Man City. I think it's hard for centre-backs coming through the academy at the highest level because I think you need that little bit of experience to kind of come in and be able to be fantastic at an age category like 20, 21, 22 is hard at the highest level for a centre-back. He will do very, very well. Russell Martin is a very, very young, likeable manager, and I think he'll be looking to develop 6, 7, 8 of those Southampton players that are kind of in their early 20s. Southampton have got a very, very young spine, and I think Taylor Harwood-Bellis could absolutely outperform and outshine where Southampton could finish, where I predicted them in my video a couple of days ago that they could get relegated. I think Taylor Harwood-Bellis could be a standout name that you look at for Southampton. But we have to talk about Savinho. I know I'm a little bit biased. This guy, especially in the Community Shield when he featured as well, 2-footed, powerful. He's got a great first touch. And you look at how electric Doku was in his first season, arguably with a lesser kind of career or run-in like Savinho's got. I mean, Savinho's form for Girona last season was unbelievable. He gets them into the Champions League, gets them into a title run-in with Real Madrid and Barcelona at the start of last season. Obviously, that fell off a little bit. But Savinho's unbelievable flair, his quality, I think will be huge for Man City this season. I think there's a good chance that he starts more football matches, maybe even than Doku did last season. I think he's ready to go. I think he fills that right wing position massively as well. Oscar Bob, unfortunately, has got a leg, looks like a leg break. A fractured bone, which is gutting as a City fan to see that, because I think he would have been starting right wing a lot this season. We don't know when he's back. Savinho now and Doku on either side of Haaland. That is absolutely outrageous. He's still so young as well. It's so exciting. Right, flop transfer. Here are a few that come to mind. Ross Barkley at Aston Villa. I know it's a bit harsh. I thought he was fantastic for Luton Town last season. He's 30 years old, and sometimes these transfers where some of the bigger clubs go out and kind of spread bet a little bit or get squad filler, they never quite work. The player gets a little bit unhappy, and you could see Ross Barkley in a year moving on again. He's already been at Aston Villa. It wasn't the best spell in his career either. I'm not saying he should have stayed at Luton Town, of course not, but and obviously you want to go to the Champions League with Aston Villa. Can Ross Barkley start for Aston Villa in the Champions League and make a difference in midfield, or come off the bench in the Premier League and make a difference? Yes, he's more than good enough. He's got such talent. But I'm talking as a long-term transfer. It just seems like a little bit thin for me. Maybe I'm wrong. You have to let me know in the comments down below. Xerxes at Man United. Fantastic season for Bologna last season. He obviously he's come out previously and said, I'm not a 9 or a 10, I'm a 9.5. I just think some of these strikers that come in for Man United struggle in their first season. I'm not doubting he's got the ability to do well in the Premier League. I'm not doubting he could be a great for Man United, of course. So that's a low bar to set in the last few years, of course. But I just wonder, what's the kind of category that we're going to put Xerxes in? Should he be scoring 15, 20 in the league? It's a bit like when Nkunku came in. I know he had injuries, but I think Chelsea fans still don't understand how Nkunku fits into this Chelsea side. He costs a lot of money as well. Xerxes could find himself a little bit caught between being Bruno Fernandes in position and filling in his positions, which won't really happen because Bruno Fernandes is fantastic. And then Højlund as well. And I think there's just a world where he could get lost a little bit in the noise. That's all I'm saying. I think he's fantastic. Dewsbury Hall is the one for me. I like this guy from the Championship. Fantastic talent, of course. But Chelsea needs someone on that different level. They need someone with such more higher quality, in my opinion, to drive them up the table. If they come 10th, it's because they got Dewsbury Hall in midfield, with all due respect. If Chelsea want to be getting back to 4th, I just don't think he's the man. He might be part of a midfield. He obviously works hard. He is a talented boy, of course he is. But there's just this element for me of it not being the most incredible transfer, most adventurous transfer in the world. Obviously, he's worked with Maresca, and that'll be great. But is he going to set the world alight in West London? I don't think he is. And I think it could be a little bit one of those transfers that you kind of forget even happened in a year's time. I might be completely wrong about that. I just don't see it happening. I think Dewsbury Hall could be the flop transfer. First manager sacked. Russell Martin has to be on the shortlist for me just because he's young. He's never managed at his level. I think he's very liked in Southampton. But the board have shown at points at Southampton that they can be a little bit ruthless. I remember when they sacked Nigel Adkins and got in Pochettino. It depends how Southampton have changed as a football club, because when they got relegated, they were looking a little bit depressed as a football club. They looked flat. And then Russell Martin's brought in a lot of youthful energy and got them straight back up into the Premier League. So if the board believe in his vision, they could get relegated with him, and that's fair enough. But if they go back to this kind of idea of when they first got promoted, 10 years ago with Adkins, they might look to Russell Martin and say, let's get rid of you and bring in someone with a little bit more experience. It might be ruthless, but I could just see that happening just because of how young he is. Maresca on the shortlist. I nearly put him as my number 1 nomination, but I just think it can't keep going on where you sack a manager after 3 or 4 months like Graham Potter. And obviously Pochettino was short-lived based on how good I think he was, really, to get them into such a good position at the back end of last season. They can't sack him first, surely. Steve Cooper, I think they could struggle. I'm not sure about the points deductions, what that looks like on the table, but I think the Leicester City owners, with the amount of pressure on the business as the footballing business side of Leicester City, they could really struggle, and they could look to Cooper as an easy way out to get someone in that maybe buoys the club up a little bit more at the table. So there's just no threat of relegation. If they're lingering 17th, 16th by maybe 18th, 19th by October, by the end of September, they could sack him. Just because he has that kind of record with Nottingham Forest where he was keeping them up. I think they kept coming 16th, 17th. Then they sacked him for Nuno. If Leicester City see the similar pattern there, I think they'll sack him pretty sharpish. Star season. Now, obviously, there's some big candidates. You could put Haaland in because he's back-to-back seasons being the highest scorer in the Premier League. Phil Foden. Obvious choices. Saka, Salah, Bruno Fernandes. I think they're pretty obvious choices. I've put 3 in this video that are a little bit underrated. The first one's Solanke. People are not as excited as... Obviously, I'm not massively excited. I'm not a Spurs fan. But as a footballing fan, to see Solanke do so well in the Championship. He had a bit of a slow season in his first time in the Premier League with Bournemouth under Gary O'Neill. But the second season, absolutely fantastic. His finishing off the shoulder of the defender, fantastic last season. Scored so many goals for Bournemouth. I think there's a world he scores over 20 for Spurs. We can debate Spurs' principles. Are they good enough to win a cup? Do they believe in themselves to win a cup? They should be able to at this point. We can talk about the stadium. We can talk about the manager defensively. But one thing is guaranteed next season, and that is a load of goals and a lot of open attacking play from Spurs. I think he'll fall right in line and get a lot of joy with Son, in my opinion. Cole Palmer, I think he's so naturally gifted. I think he's so good that I think Chelsea will struggle next season. I predict them to come mid-table. I still think he could score 20, 25 goals. I think he's that good. I think defenses will be a little bit more wary of him. I think they'll mark him up a little bit more. I think the sides around Chelsea will make life a little bit harder for Cole Palmer. But that being said, I think Enzo Maresca has this beautiful style of football. Whether that pays dividends, we can debate in a different video. But I just think Cole Palmer is getting better and better. And that goal for England, the contributions for England in very limited capacity, said to me that even on the world stage, his trajectory is going up and up and up. And it wouldn't surprise me if he does another season like he did last season, then he gets a move to a big project. Can't debate Chelsea's size as a 2-time European champion, but a big project. But the one for me is Ollie Watkins, an English striker in the Champions League for Aston Villa. He was so good last season. Yes, there's a bit of English bias in this category, but I think all three players that I've talked about have got such incredible talent. And Ollie Watkins, the way he scored against the Dutch, the way he took Aston Villa back into the Champions League. Again, we don't talk about this narrative enough. An English striker, a big lad, a big, powerful, traditional number 9, Alan Shearer vibes, Chris Sutton vibes. Maybe that's a little bit harsh on Ollie Watkins, but it's kind of powerful striker that can finish really, really well, natural finisher. Yes, he's not as prolific as Harry Kane, but Harry Kane's a bit of a freak. He did so well to get Aston Villa into the Champions League. I think he'll flourish in the Champions League. It's a different format now as well, and I think Villa will find joy. And I think Ollie Watkins has got a much bigger ceiling than Solanke in terms of number 9s for England post Harry Kane. I think he'll be leading England out in the 2026 World Cup if he continues on this vein of form. Don't be surprised if he scores 20-25 in the Premier League and he scores 5 or 6 in the Champions League. I know it's outrageous, but I think there's a guy living on adrenaline, living on confidence, and I back Ollie Watkins to have an unbelievable season. Manager of the season, Kieran McKenna. I think he'll keep Ipswich in the league, and then he'll get a move to maybe Man United, maybe Tottenham Hotspur. I could see him getting a big, big move. He is so good, and the way players come out and talk about him, the way fans talk about him, the way he was approached even this summer to kind of replace, I think he was linked to replace Erik ten Hag at Manchester United. So the fact that people are circling already to bring him in to the highest level is outrageous. And he's so young and exciting as a manager, as an English manager. I'm a little bit selfish as an England fan. I could see him being an England manager. He's that good. I think he'll keep them in the league. I think they'll be far better than people give them credit for. I'm hoping so, because we can't have 3 relegated sides from the Championship again. I think it'd be disastrous. Lopetegui has to be in there for me. I think he's really, really top level. I think he's got that conservatism of a David Moyes, almost pragmatic as a manager. But his time at Wolves, they play some decent football. I think with Kudus, Jared Bowen, they'll be looking good, this West Ham side, pushing 7th, maybe higher in the league. I'm going to go with Arteta. I think this season Arsenal will win a cup. I think they'll go further in the Champions League, and they will push Man City to win the Premier League. They will. And I just think managing this level and getting more out of players season after season, I think you have to say that Arteta will be an unbelievable manager this season. I've not predicted Arsenal to win the Premier League because I just think Man City's quality is there. But if Arteta keeps making these 5%, 10% improvements to the squad, Caliafori's big, Timber's big, if he can get a number 9 in, I think Arsenal are geared up to have this kind of formidable season. Biggest disappointments will be Manchester United. Billions spent down the drain. They came 8th last season, and the FA Cup did cover over the cracks on some level. De Ligt's a good signing. Mazraoui, I'm not sure, undecided. Xerxes, undecided, obviously. So I just don't see a world they come top 4. I don't see a world where they win any major silverware. I just think it's another season of stagnation, in my opinion. And I think they'll be looking... The fact they were so close to getting rid of him in the summer, and they kind of talked to everyone, and then they kind of just kept him reluctantly. I just think he's ready to go, and I think the whole project is still a little bit flat. I think it's better. I think Omar Barada coming in. I think Jason Wilcox. It looks a lot better. De Ligt looks like a good transfer window. De Ligt, Lenny Yoro. It looks like a far more cohesive transfer window. But on the football pitch this season, Man United is still not going anywhere. And best transfer, I've thrown a few different names in there. The first one for me, well, I've talked about it on this channel already. I think De Ligt. I think he's a Premier League centre-back ready to go. I think he's a Man United level centre-back in terms of calibre, in terms of experience. I think he could be there for quite a few years. He's got Jaap Stam vibes. Obviously not that level, but I think he's got that ability. I think he's got that almost quality. The Dutch defenders, they're fantastic. I think he'll be superb. A couple that haven't quite happened yet upon recording, but basically look like they will. Calvin Phillips to Ipswich. I want him to do well on a personal level. I think he'll shore up Ipswich's midfield. I think he'll work hard and he'll be good in a Kieran McKenna side that are very, very high energy, Very, very high press. He's got a little bit of Bielsa at Leeds United about him, Kieran McKenna. And if it happens, it's a great little move for him because Ipswich is still a big club. And I think he's at that level. I don't think he's top 10 anymore, Calvin Phillips, in the Premier League. But I think he's in that bottom half of the Premier League. It's a bit harsh, but I think it'd be a good signing for Ipswich and a free one as well on loan. The big one for me, it has to be Evanilson to Bournemouth, £40 million. This is a Brazilian striker that scored multiple goals, five goals in the Champions League for Porto, 1 in 3 for the biggest club arguably in Portugal. It's huge. How are Bournemouth spending 40, 50 million pounds on Brazilian strikers that have got caps for Brazil? It's crazy. And I think it will work. There's a world. He's got a higher ceiling than Solanke. I like Solanke a lot. But this Evanilson guy has got a great touch on him, can carry the ball very well, good finish. Not the most prolific. But Bournemouth signing a Brazilian number 9 from the Portuguese league? Come on. This is exciting. However you look at it, it's crazy that Bournemouth are doing it historically. But they kind of earned the right to do it. Iriola with this guy. It could be an unbelievable signing. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. It's going to be an exciting season. Let me know your predictions. I'll see you very, very soon.